Come on. Hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, and I'm laughing because I'm having such a good time before we go on with our guest, Eliza Minot. And I put this in the chat. It's a fun fact that even though her name looks like Minot, if you want to be French, it's really Minot. Anyway, I'm very, very excited about it. So A Mighty Blaze was started the day of the lockdown because Jenna Blum and I could not stand it that people's tours were canceled. Mine was totally canceled on the day of the lockdown. Bookstores were shuttered. Readers didn't have access to writers and vice versa. And it was just a mess. So we're moving on to celebrating our 4th year, which means A Mighty Blaze is a toddler. So don't forget to sign up to subscribe to our channel. You can watch all of our interviews, including this one. It's going to live forever on our YouTube station. We also encourage everybody to please buy your books at an indie bookstore to make things better and easier for your community and for writers. We've also included a link so you can buy Eliza's books at bookshop.org. So please post your questions up there. So let me give you a great introduction to Eliza Minot. Eliza Minot is the critically acclaimed, beloved author of the novels The Tiny One, The Brambles, and this gorgeous beauty in the orchard, which we're also going to talk about. Her work has appeared in just about every magazine there is, every anthology, and her books have been named to various lists, which is something every writer desires, including the New York Times Notable, Book Sense 76, which was actually Indie Next Picks now. I remember that. I remember that. Yeah. Nancy Pearl's list, Oprah's top 10 summer picks. She went to Barnard College, received her MFA from Rutgers, where she was a presidential fellow. She's taught at Rutgers Newark, Barnard, and NYU. She is a recipient of a New Jersey State Artist Fellowship and was on the short list for the Notting Hill Edition Essays Prize. She received the Maplewood Library Literary Award, and she grew up the youngest of 7 children in Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. So let's talk about some of the praise for In the Orchard. The New York Times says she delivers such consistently perceptive, even stunning sentences. The Brambles leaves you marbling, looking forward to the author's next move. For The Tiny One, the New York Times said, she has a sorcerer's ability to perceive the emotional spirits trapped in nature. She has a wild, unstrung, lyrical gift. You need to put that on a t-shirt. That's just I love that gorgeous. I love that. Yeah. For In the Orchard, we have more reviews. Rapturous. Minot's text is variously descriptive, perceptive, heartfelt, and fanciful. Kirkus reviews from the New York Times, compassionate and lyrical, wonderfully attuned to the body and its sensations. Minot's focus on Maisie's interiority reads as its own bold choice. Here's a mother's rich and nuanced inner life. Here's an author granting recognition denied by society. Love that. It so perfectly describes the book. And from Booklist, deeply personal and moving. This is an intimate look inside modern life and motherhood. Written from Maisie's point of view, this is a deep dive into the mind of a mother with a stream of consciousness, fluidity, and randomness that makes for interesting and beautiful reading. All this gorgeous praise is absolutely true. Also, look at this gorgeous cover. So in this book, we're inside the life of Maisie, a young wife to Neil and a mother, and she takes us into her inner world and her experiences and her worries, who has made her who she is, both as a person and as a mother. She goes from nursing 2-week-old Esme to the families coming to the orchard. It's this very intense experience of, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, of anxiety, grief, and of course, my all-time favorite, a sense of wonder. So welcome so much to Eliza Minot. Thank you, Eliza, for being here. I'm so
Thank
thrilled.
you so much. Thank you, Caroline. That was lovely. I feel like I wrote a book after
you did. You wrote a gorgeous book. It's so great. So all of your books are intense in a most wonderful way, with this incredibly superb attention to details. It feels to me that, you know, you really captured motherhood, that there's no way to plan it all out. Instead, Maisie is really present. I love that you wrote about there is a cost to motherhood as well as a blessing. Macy has an quote unquote invincible amount of debt. And that's true because when you have kids, no matter how you plan, it's harder to live the kind of hard scrabble life that might have been okay when you were on your own. Why doesn't society talk about that enough? I mean, about we all need or needed childcare and extra hands around the house. And there's when my son was young, it was a desperate need to connect to other mothers to see like who could have a play date just so you could have an hour to take a shower or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a little bit?
I wonder why people don't. I mean, moms certainly talk about it, or being tired, or not having enough time. And the money thing, I guess, to answer the first part of what you were saying, is why don't people, just that invincible feeling, I mean, that invincible debt feeling of young families, and nobody really, it's just depressing. I mean, when you're, it's not a fun topic for anyone to be chatting about. It's not a feel good, let's have a, I don't know, talk about lack of wonder. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of
Right.
such a, I think even in the beginning, there's a line of like, it's so unsexy and such a drag. Nobody wants to talk about debt or not,
Yeah.
So in fact, this book I started to write it a long time ago and even sold it with the idea of, it had a totally different title. It was called American Standard, and it was
Oh,
going to sort of be more about the housing crisis, two different families and how they are going through it. And even I wasn't that interested in this grim talk. I mean, I don't mean it like that, but I found myself just writing more about the
right.
mothering, because I was also I had 4 children of my own. I spent so much time doing that and being preoccupied with that. And, it's certainly, Caroline was my material, let's put it that way. And I
Yeah.
also thought, no one talks about this kind of the anxiety of
Mhm.
just bearing children or raising them, or, making life really and being
Right.
responsible for it. And the anxiety of money. I mean, just the anxiety and the wonder of having children. So
Right.
I found myself writing more about that, and also feeling like this is also something people don't really, I don't mean people, there's plenty of literature about mothering. I don't mean that motherhood isn't written about, but I hadn't read about a
Yeah.
newborn, or just the experience of kind of the day-to-day microscopic
Yes.
intensity that goes from like profound to completely mundane to really profound again, to it's like falling in love or having someone die, I felt like, on almost a daily basis.
Yeah, there's a real gorgeous sense of time here. There are the moments that seem like hours to Maisie, and then there are the moments that are like so perfect, and they slip by way, way too fast. It's very, to me, it's very like sort of quantum physics in the sense that time is man-made, and everybody tells you, we were talking about this before, that it goes so fast. And it
Yeah,
does, and yet it doesn't. I mean, and what I loved about the novel is it captured that feeling of, it's almost hallucinatory. Yeah, it's almost
yeah.
hallucinatory being a mom at times. I wanted to talk about mothering when you've lost your mother. Maisie lost her
Yeah.
mother when she was 5, and I know you lost your own mom when you were young. And Maisie worries about her children losing her. But I was wondering, isn't there always, the worry about how a motherless daughter, or a daughter who didn't have the right kind of mother, can become a successful mother to her kids? I mean, how did you grapple with that in this novel, and how did you grapple with that when you became a mother yourself? How did you know what to do?
Do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I feel like when I mean, I certainly babysat, I would be around
Yeah.
kids somewhat, but it wasn't like actually I see my daughters spend tons of times with much more time with children and small children than I did, because I also was the youngest of a very large family. So all
Right.
of the cousins and siblings and all of those people, there weren't any youngers than me. I was the one that was being mothered, even though there wasn't a mother after I was 7, she died. But I still was
So, yeah.
being kind of tended to, I was the baby, you know. But they did start to, one of my sisters had, when I was maybe 21, had her first child. So I saw babies
Oh,
and would see
sorry.
her, it was like I would be with babe, but I didn't think, "Oh, I'm dying to be a mom," really. And I guess when I met my husband, it wasn't so much even that my mind changed. It just, I was one of 7, he's one of 5, and it
Wow.
just seemed like we would have one, and then it seemed like one, we'll have another. It was sort of, we left the door open after our 3rd, and then the 4th did come. I don't think it necessarily was like, "Let's have 4," it wasn't a plan. And so it's a very interesting question though, because I had, certainly my older sisters, seeing them, give their kids baths and have a little schedule, or those like little things that they did that I thought, yeah, that seems like a good idea. Or, but it also, I think probably a lot of the reason of my having kids in the first place was not to like replicate my mom, but just to kind of go there. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
she'd been missing all that time. I did write my first book about losing my mother. I mean, it's fiction, obviously,
Right.
but it's a day in the life of a 8-year-old. Looking back, at the beginning, she finds out the mother, or no, I guess basically it's the day in the life of when the mother died. So she's remembering the day a couple days later and thinking back to other memories. So this, in a weird way, I didn't really realize it consciously, but as I kind of was almost completing it, I'm like, this is like the other side of the tiny one, which was my
Right.
first book.
Right.
It's like,
Right. Right.
and there is, there's not a worry of, I don't know, there is, I don't want to, it's not like giving away anything, but there's a little bit of an aspect of danger later in
Yes.
this,
Yes.
where there's an ambiguity of what's really happening. I don't know, just that we're all could disappear and die at any moment. And
That's right.
certainly the fragility of life is emphasized when you're just a new mother, because you're vulnerable, and babies are incredibly
Baby's very
vulnerable.
vulnerable. Yeah, exactly. That's what having children does. I think it makes you super hyper aware that
Yes,
any moment, and you have to figure
totally.
out a way to live with that. Otherwise, you're spending all your time saying, what if he doesn't make it to school? What if he's
Totally.
crossing the street and there's a car? What if he
Yeah.
gets sick? What if this? And you don't want to pass those anxieties on to your kids.
No, I know. And I think I did have that too, just from my mother was killed abruptly in an accident. So it was random. And, that was definitely a mind
Oh my God.
whatever, just
Yeah.
thinking like any second, anything can happen. But looking back, I don't know whether it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like even before she died, I would think about, I mean, not as a little kid, but I remember thinking people can just die because it's so obvious. But I mean,
Right.
thinking, and then almost when she did, it was like, oh my God, she did, it's like
Did
anybody.
you, so being a little kid, did you think you caused it at all? Did you worry?
I didn't really think that, but it did kind of, it was like, see, it does happen. I don't know if that's just me playing tricks with myself, like it sort of was a way of coping, like, oh, I always thought this might happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I mean, I think, yeah, but
I
you can't be alive and not
not think about
dying
that.
when you see
Right,
a dead bird when you're a kid, or you know what I mean?
right,
It's like
right. Things go missing. Things go
things
missing.
happen. Yeah. I mean,
I
yeah.
want to talk. There's this amazing part in the book where one non-mother is totally affronted when she's told, she can't imagine what it's like to be a mother because she's not a mother. And she said, imagining something isn't the same as experiencing it. That sort of happens a lot. Unfortunately, there's a lot of discord between mothers and non-mothers these days. There's a lot of young women who do not want to be mothers, and that's fine. That's their choice, and that's great. And they really get angry when people who are mothers tell them, oh, you don't know what you're missing, or it's,
Right.
you can't know it unless you are it. So I wanted to know if you think that, first of all, is that line, imagining something isn't the same as experiencing it, is really true? Because first of all, you're a writer, and you must feel that when you're imagining stuff that it is real, because the lines are so blurry. And the second part of the question is about how we can, even discuss more fruitfully this whole problem between mothers and non-mothers, that it's okay not to be a mother, and it's okay to have that experience. And in a way, we who are mothers cannot imagine, maybe we can't imagine what it's like not to have a kid. I'm sorry, that's a really complicated question, but
no, but I have thought about, it's an interesting question, because it's, it comes to the root of all of trying to understand other people, period, and I think we can understand each other and imagine, but imagining isn't the same as assuming
right. Right.
So being empathetic and listening to people is one thing, but thinking, I know how you feel, is
Right.
just a losing battle. Even in writing. I mean, writing, you can kind of rub up to it a little bit.
Right.
And I think that's why reading is so interesting, because you can get closer or something in a way that you can't to someone's experience by just watching them or imagining. But yeah, I don't think imagining is the same as experiencing at
Right.
all.
And when you're imagining,
Because even when we experience it, one can't even get their head around it, right? It's like, you experience something and you can kind of express yourself as close as you can, but even that's not really reaching what you're trying to get at, I find.
Right. And
But
it's
then
just
the other part of your question, which I do think is not sad, but it's always, it's always I don't mean when women fight, but it's like life is hard, when they like come to loggerheads
right.
about, it's like, it's all right, everyone, we can all just listen to each
Right.
other and understand.
Right.
Like life
Plus
is hard enough than being like, you don't understand me. I don't understand. It's like, don't tell me this. But I don't know. I think the danger is just making assumptions about what one thinks other people feel.
Plus, what we feel as individuals and what other people feel in their experience is also different. You can take
Yeah.
5 mothers and 5 non-mothers, and their experiences are totally different depending on what they're doing in their life or what kind of children they have.
Absolutely. Or even
That's
between mothers who are
right.
experiencing the same 2-year-old age. They're on completely
Right.
different wavelengths, right?
Right. Right.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, let's talk about craft. Everything in the book is in present tense, which I loved because it feels like every moment matters. It gives it this extra intensity. Was this your intention to do this, or was this your subconscious at work? And again, another two-parter.
Yes.
And do you try to live your life that way, trying to stay in the present, or are you like me, a worrier who obsesses about the future and the past both? I mean, do
Well,
you try to
I
stay in
think,
the moment?
I guess I try, but I also obsess about the past and the future too. So probably a lot like you, Caroline. I know. But I did the present tense pretty much so I could just go into the past without having to
Right.
explain. You know what I mean? So there's like flashbacky stuff or even imaginings. And I don't know, if it were me as a mother on, from sort of 2 a.m. until afternoon in an orchard, I don't know if these were the thoughts that I would have necessarily in that time
Right.
frame, but it just seemed like things that would maybe come up in this Maisie's person mind.
Okay.
And the present tense, I guess it's like, on the one hand, I feel like I could just keep on writing a book like this. Do you know what I mean? And go through a day, go into the afternoon, go into the evening, like I could just keep on going. But that's kind of a snore, maybe. But
I
it also
don't think
is
so.
kind of what how I could kind of manage this sort of overwhelming, like, many years that I experienced. Not that I was even trying to capture my kids or my own, do you know what I mean? But there's just, the present tense seemed a way to kind of pay attention to the little, like when you are with a baby, you definitely are like
Right.
that more
Right.
than if you're, I don't know, cleaning out a closet when you're 45 years old. Do you know what I mean? Just kind of,
It's
there's an,
different.
yeah, there is. There's like a,
Critics just rhapsodize over your language, and rightly so. I mean, there are sentences that they're so gorgeous, you just want to frame them. So I wanted to know, how do you approach language? Is this just something where you get in the zone and it comes out? Do you read your sentences out loud to see how they sound? Or how do you approach crafting these exquisite sentences? And they are exquisite.
thank you. That is really, really nice of you to say. I think it's a combination, but often I feel like even when I became not just, I mean, I always liked reading as a kid, like reading,
Mhm.
whatever, the yearling, or I mean, not that that doesn't have beautiful sentences, but I liked, like, booky books. And then as I got older, it was just, even when I didn't understand language, like reading Faulkner or something,
Right.
I'd be like, whoa, it would blow my mind, but I wouldn't even understand what he was saying. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it was
Right.
either
Right.
too
Right.
sophisticated, or I was just so kind of transfixed by the rhythm. It just didn't even
Right.
matter. Or Walt Whitman, I just would read it being like, what is he? I mean, as I've grown older, I can understand what's being said better. But there was like kind of a, that's what draws me to reading in the, like, primally, I think, back to
Mhm.
literature, like when I was becoming not more sophisticated, but you know what I mean, like more of a more grown-up reader. It was
Right.
really the poetry and like reading poetry, even when like Emily Dickinson, it's like, what does she mean? I don't know, but whoa. It's just sort of that, like, I really love the words and how they sound, or even how they, not necessarily, well, how they look on the page.
Right. Right.
So, how do I guess I just I don't even know, like, wow, that's a beautiful sentence, but I just
But you feel it.
embrace that kind of language. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. In the novel, I don't want to give anything away, but Maisie has encounters with two older women, which was just so profound and important. And I wanted to know, without giving anything away, why you had her have these encounters.
Yes, I can, without giving anything away.
Okay.
I felt like there had been a lot of sort of flashbacks or side tracks to other younger mothers or women. And I didn't so consciously at first think there's barely going to be a man in this book, but there really is not a lot. I mean, there's Neil, the
That's
husband.
true. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, I just thought, if I'm going to add to this literature, let's just make it about
Okay.
we're just going to stick with that. And there's limited hours that we're focusing on this. So there is Frank. There's a man that she talks to with the horse at the orchard. So it's not like there's no men at all, but it's there's some dads and gay guys, and there are some caregivers. It's not like it's all women. But I figured we've heard a lot from younger caregivers and older moms in her town, because there's sort of there are conversations here and there at the gymnastics place or at the preschool or at the little soccer game in town. Like there's little interactions with other parents. And I figured, going where we're going, which I won't give away, but there is an ending that's a little bit, I don't know, it's not like a shocker, but it's not, it's maybe somewhat unexpected or ambiguous of,
I was totally
okay,
unexpected,
all right,
and yet
good.
it's exactly right. Exactly right.
Because this will intrigue people to read the book till the end, because it gets better. I think I like the second half when they're in the orchard and when it gets to the end. So anyway, I was thinking older women, like different phase mothers. Like, she meets a older woman, and then she thinks back to the previous year when they were in the orchard, when they encountered a grandmother. who talks of her grandchildren, like a younger grandmother than the one she meets on this day in the orchard. So that was what interested me, kind of.
It's totally right for the book. Okay, I know you've talked about this a million times, and part of me feels like, oh, if you don't want to talk about this, we can move on. But I would love to talk about. You're from an astonishing family with astonishing stories. You're one of 7 incredibly creative siblings, and there's been a lot of drama in your life. Your sister Susan Minot, also an author, said that your large brood is to get back the mother you never had, or to be the mother you never had. So let's start there, and then we'll continue to talk. First of all, is it okay to talk about this? Because I know you must be tired of it. Okay, great. Okay, so let's start there.
Yeah, well, that was sort of like what we were talking. I'm not sort of like, but I did back at the beginning when we were talking about the tiny one, losing my mom, and then this book is sort of a flip side to that, but also having kids, even though it wasn't like a major plan in my life. I mean, I'm delighted that it ended up this way, but I don't, there was a time where I thought, am I even going to ever, I don't know, have children, or one doesn't know what, and I'm not we never know what's gonna happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do think not having my mom had to do with building a home for my children, at least, that we have stayed in this house for the last 20, like a stable, comfortable suburban place is definitely,
So all of you,
and other aspects of my upbringing, but I think,
all of you were creative. Were there, obviously there are pros to that, but were there cons when you were kids? I know that later, your brother Sam took coverage with something that was written. Can you talk about that? It's just a fascinating story.
Well, as one can imagine, everybody in a large family, and things go down with the parent, like, just everybody has different versions of what they think has occurred. But my brother Sam, specifically, my brother George, wrote a book kind of based on my brother Sam, and that caused some friction. Understandably. I mean, it wasn't him, but it was close enough, or at least my brother Sam felt it was close enough. And that's something I don't know, for me to talk about it is a little bit, I don't really know how to approach it because it's between them.
Right. Okay. I want to move on to the cover, which is this cover is so beautiful because you look at it and the first thing you see is all this gorgeous greenery, and then you look closer, and there's this little tiny baby on a little plaid mat, and then you look even closer, and the thing that got me was there's an apple here, and when I saw that apple, I thought, oh my God, the baby's gonna gum it, and the baby's gonna choke and eat it, and whatever. Can you tell us, was this? Oh, did you know that this was the cover you wanted? Do you have input in the cover? And did you ever go ahead.
Jenny Caro designed it. She's the designer for Knopf who did it. And I had no idea. I know nothing. And it was the first one that, here, what do you think? Do you love this as much as I do? My editor said, and I clicked on it and opened it and I laughed. I mean, not like ha ha ha, but I went like, oh my God.
I know, it's perfect. It's perfect. I love covers like that, especially like you worry for this baby, and also there's such an expansive greenery. You keep thinking, who's watching the baby?
I know. There's something. It looks almost like a hawk is going to come pick it up or something. And I am kind of obsessed with those shadows on the grass like that. Like, I love that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I didn't even think, I sort of in my mind was thinking, like, I hope they don't design a photograph. Like, I don't know, it just would be fun to have some graphics of some kind, see what they do. And then
beautiful. It's really, it's just a really arresting, gorgeous cover. And
I love it.
It has a lot of layers in it. And I just worry about the baby, which probably was your
Yeah,
intention.
it
Can you
has a
tell us
little bit.
about
Yeah.
can you tell us about your writing practice? What's your usual day like?
Oh, I wish I could had something very sort of romantically organized to say, but I mean, this book actually I wrote mostly, I finished at least and wrote a lot of it during COVID
Oh,
because my house was full and I had to. We also couldn't really, as we all know, go anywhere. So it was like being here. All we could do was sort of go on walks or like everybody, you know. But since there was nothing that could be done, I guess I got up in the morning like all of those writers that I would hear about that I thought, how could they do that? Who get up at 5 and write for a couple hours? I know, I became one of them just because my whole
really?
house was
Oh,
it
right,
was
right. That's what it's
quiet
quiet,
and I'd
right.
make tea and it was dark and even it was silent. There wasn't even we can vaguely hear like the nearby highway and we're on a fairly busy little road, but it was like nothing. It was and I was well enough into my book that it wasn't like, okay, what am I doing? You know, I was like, I
Right.
was had stuff to do. So that was then. Now I don't really have, I mean, I have like tons of these.
I do too.
Do you?
Folders. Yes. Oh my
No, these are
God.
littler. They're like little book size. These are little books. They're like as
Yeah.
big as my hand, smaller than a folder.
Wow.
But I have maybe too many. They're like in my pocketbook. There's one in the car. They're sort of all over the place, and I write into my phone too.
Oh, that's great.
So I
That's
don't know. Generally, I mean, to be more specific, I do try to write when I first wake up for like half an hour. It's not even very long, but and then throughout the day when I have time. I'm teaching often,
oh,
so
right.
that takes up, I mean, particularly like right now I'm teaching a composition class, which is just a lot of essays to correct. So that takes up time.
You don't
But
still do the essays, the pyramid method, do you? That we learned in school? I hope not.
almost.
Oh, you do?
No, I guess it's not quite like that, but yeah, it's the intro, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You know, it's like,
Oh, well, that's okay. I mean,
yeah,
like,
that is
we did
okay. No, I
that's
remember.
okay.
Yeah,
You remember
the
that, like, all the things they taught me about writing, like, use a lot of 6 adjectives are better than 1.
that's right.
Pretty
It's like so
thorough
many
now.
kids come in like with the hook. I'm like, you don't
Yes.
need to hook me. I'm gotta, it's like, have you
We have
heard about racism? You know, it's like, it's like I don't need a hook.
we have an audience question. Yay. What do you look for in choosing a book to read? I guess they mean like, do you look for the cover? Do you read the first paragraph? What do you
I
gravitate
do.
to?
I have a bad pet habit too of reading. I mean, just because you said, do you read the first paragraph? If I'm in a bookstore and it's a book I know nothing about, I often look at the first paragraph and the last paragraph.
I do too. I
Okay,
do
good.
too. It drives my husband crazy.
Well, it
I
doesn't give
have to
anything away, but then
no,
you have
and
a sense of what you're getting into. Yeah.
plus, even if it's like whenever we watch movies, I have to go on the movie spoiler first to see how it ends because my pleasure is in seeing how it got to that place.
Me too.
Oh, I love it. I
Which, I
love
mean, because we're talking about it, the very ending of this book, which will also draw people to have to read it to find out, or I guess they could look in a bookstore at the very end. But the very, very last, like, I don't know, little paragraph, or maybe it's like 3 sentences. I had that in my head, like I wrote that down and had it in my head as an ending like decade ago, even though I didn't know what the book was going to be, really. So,
I always
yeah,
do that. I always sort of think in terms of back to front that I have to sort of know the
yeah,
devastation of the character at the end, and then it's the fun is like finding how they got there.
yeah,
I how
yeah.
they got there.
Yeah.
Oh, we have another audience question. Can you talk about what you're working on now?
Yes, I can. I mean, I was about to say I usually have 2 or 3 things I'm working on, which is so not true. This book took me it didn't take me almost 15 years to write, but it was between 2 books. It was 15 years between my last book and
Mhm.
this one. Really, I was raising 4 kids, then I was, whatever, writing and did it. But I was about to say I'm working on 3 things, all to
Wow.
say really 1, but it's not 3. Maybe they'll all combine, and then things happen where, like, last week I read a story, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where a baby in 1985, a newborn that was found, this was in New Jersey in my local news, was found, with the umbilical cord still on in a, like, wooded preserve,
Oh
dead.
boy.
Yeah, like, abandoned. They didn't know whose it was for 40 years, and now a mother who was a teenager at the time just got arrested for it.
Oh my
And I thought, "Oh
God.
my god." I mean,
Oh my God, it's
at
right.
that time, I was about 14 or whenever that woman would have been pregnant. I'm not saying that's what I'm gonna write about, but it's like things
That's an
like
inc
that come in and you think, "Oh my god, that is so
that
rich
goes in the
in so
notebook,
many
right?
things." Yeah, like somewhere or so what am I working on now? It's either a book of short stories and or a novel,
Okay.
which
Okay.
yeah.
We have another question. Okay. What writing advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say read a lot.
Yeah.
That would be my biggest advice. I
Can
did
you
read a
read?
lot, but I feel like I wish I read more even as a younger person.
Can you read while you're writing, or does that distract you?
I think it does distract me only because now that I'm done, I'm reading all the time. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
right.
I realize
Okay.
how much more I'm reading now than I was before.
Okay.
But
And we
there are things like, like I was reading sort of as I was finishing and editing my book, so I was pretty much done with it. But I did read sort of, I read A Ghost in the Throat. Did you read that?
Mhm. Yeah.
And The
Yeah.
Nursery, like kind of books that were early motherhood
Okay.
oriented.
Okay. We have one last question, which is a question
Mhm.
I ask every writer because it's a question I ask myself every single day, which is
Yeah.
what's obsessing you now and why? And what are you doing about it?
Yeah, what an excellent question, because that's what I tell my creative writing students all the time, like, "What are you obsessed with? Don't ignore
Oh,
that." I mean,
that's
well, it's like
great.
it's what you're and
Yeah.
again, like I was talking about this book, I was completely not just preoccupied, but, like, occupied. It wasn't even a preoccupation, I was, like, occupied with kids, little kids for a while. What I am preoccupied with right now is, I guess, growing children when they're grown and being
Yeah.
moving out of that phase of motherhood. But this is
Yeah.
also on the motherhood track. If I think
Right.
outside of that, I'm somewhat obsessed with, not that baby story necessarily like that, but mothers who aren't ready to have a child or who,
Right.
like those sort of things. People living life and how they're prevented from living the lives they want to live, whether it's emotionally or physically or financially, those things, I don't know, that seems to be sort of my preoccupation. And even the things that prevent people from loving the way they want to love.
Right, right. Oh, I just thought of one more question. In the book, Maisie talks about the main thing that she wants to teach her children is how to love, which I thought was so, I mean, I don't write in books, but if I did, I would have underlined that sentence because I thought that was really profound because as I get older and like my son's now 27, that's sort of like the thing that I want for him because I think that's the thing that makes people happy. So I was really glad you wrote that in the book. It was just lovely. It's
Thank
lovely.
you. I mean, it's a hard thing to learn, sort of.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard and not, but hard. Yeah.
but it's important. So, everybody, here's the absolutely gorgeous cover again. If you look in the chat, there is a link to bookshop.org where you can buy this book and all of Eliza's books and every book on the planet that you could ever want. Thank you all for being here. Remember, you can direct friends to our YouTube station, Mighty Blaze, where you can watch this and tell people to watch this and watch all our other interviews. And we'll see you. We'll see you the next time. So thank you all for being here, and I want to thank Eliza so much. And Eliza, don't go away. So
I
we'll
won't.
see you all soon. Bye.